And we are live. So I have
Great.
Alish with me from Azerbaijan, living in Azerbaijan. And you recently did a podcast about the Nagorno Karabakh and the current conflict. And so, with this current conflict, the one in 2020, it did not occur in the normal area. And
Yes.
can you speak a little bit more to kind of what was the build up and how this kind of little skirmish occurred?
Okay. Thanks for inviting me to your podcast, first of all. So basically, the relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia has been a tense one, obviously, for like past 28 years or past 30 years, if you are taking the wartime into account as well. But recently, with this COVID-19 pandemic, the situation has got harder and harder in Armenia, and numbers are rising continuously. So because of all these things, there has been protests in Armenia, and also the prime minister couldn't fulfill his promises, which has given in 2018 when there was this revolution happened, and he came to the government and he promised, okay, everything is going to be fine, everything is going to be much better, there will be no corruption, and people will have their jobs. Basically, life will be much easier. But those promises couldn't be fulfilled, and this pandemic made everything worse. Like most of the states' economies are bad in a bad situation, and Armenia is one of the specific cases as well. So therefore, there has been protests in Armenia, and recently, the wars that happened to the northern part of Azerbaijan, not in Nagorno Karabakh. It's understandable that Armenia wanted to attack, and because their prime minister wanted to bring back that reputation he got in 2018, and for that they need the war, and that has been very widespread method to be used by politicians to gain respect by the population again, and to and there's also one more important point about that area where the conflict occurred recently. That area has the most important gas and oil pipelines, which are important projects for Europe, for Georgia, and Turkey at the same time. And Armenia had been isolated from all those projects for the past 20, 30 years because of Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. And when Armenia attacked Tovuz, which is the northern part of Azerbaijan, they kind of aimed to take control of those lines as well, because those lines are in close proximity to the borderline between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So that is the most important and most related cause for the conflict recently.
Okay, yeah. And from what I understand, it was a hill that where majority of the conflict, and that hill was overlooking the valley of that pipeline. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, that those hills are strategic points which protect all those pipelines. If you have those hills, you literally have the control over all the area, and those heights are really important. Um, the thing is that when Armenia attacked, they attacked with artillery and they were doing this shelling, and they thought they can easily take those heights, and they can easily control those lines.
Okay, yeah. They attacked with and you guys had a couple of your military brass that were killed in this skirmish, including a general. I heard a couple colonels and a lieutenant.
Yes, unfortunately.
Now, do you think that's one of the things, because there were protests afterwards in Baku? Do you think that was one of the things for the protests in Azerbaijan to go to war?
Well, you know, this conflict has been a great pain for Azerbaijanis and Azerbaijan itself. In a way, we had 1 million of migrants coming from Karabakh to live in the city or other parts of Azerbaijan. And the thing is that this Nagorno Karabakh conflict, and especially the killing of some military officials, uh, have been a kind of a moment where population had to react at some point, because one of the soldiers who died during this conflict was just living next to me, like literally we have like 2 blocks difference, and there were a lot of people like over there, like and afterwards, after They brought they made kind of funeral, like formal funeral, and afterwards the people marched towards the city center and began protesting. And there was this one point which Armenian media, and especially like many Armenians, made fake facts about. They were saying like Azerbaijan wants a war with Armenia, but that wasn't an actual reality. People wanted to go to war to take back Karabakh. It wasn't about Armenia. It was about Karabakh, because we are not interested in Armenia. Armenia is not the lands that are occupied. Nagorno Karabakh is the part which is occupied, and people want Nagorno Karabakh back. And that's why people were protesting, as they were saying, we want to go to the war because that's enough. We have been we didn't get back Karabakh in this last 28 years since 1992, when the actual occupation began for Nagorno Karabakh. And
so there's a sense of frustration in kind of the diplomatic process in Azerbaijan.
Yes, and I would say I need to say one more thing about that. You probably know about OSCE, right?
Yeah, that's France, the United States, and Russia sitting on a group, kind of trying to find a solution to this conflict.
Yeah, like to be short, like to make sure, like Minsk group. They have been working on negotiations for like past 28 years, but we don't have any results. And there's this one important fact that they didn't even visit the parts which was shelled by Armenians, and there were a lot of civilians who got their homes damaged and their homes were destroyed, and they didn't even visit those areas. There was only one MP who went there to check the situation over there, because basically she was representing that specific area. Then our ombudsman went over there, who was the human rights defender, and she saw the situation over there as well. So basically they had been ineffective in general. These international organizations have been ineffective. And like UN passed 4 resolutions against Armenia saying you have to give Nagorno-Karabakh back, you have to take your military out of those lands, but they still didn't fulfill those resolutions. And I feel like it's fair enough that people are frustrated. And to be honest, people are frustrated, people are emotional, and it was kind of fair enough that they wanted war. In a way, they want to take back those lands because there are no results for the past 28 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a tough situation because there were those resolutions, but none of them were really enforced at the time. And then it came, you had the Madrid principles, and there's more talk now, especially with the Velvet Revolution in Armenia, is looking for a potential peace offering in the future. Now, as far as like right after this conflict, you had Turkey announce that it's going to support Azerbaijan. You had Pakistan announce it was going to support Azerbaijan, and probably because Turkey announced it was going to support Azerbaijan, Greece announced that it was going to support Armenia. But just kind of talk about some of these bodies. Pakistan, I think the first one, like Pakistan, what is the reason why Pakistan supports Azerbaijan?
Well, Pakistan and Azerbaijan has this past relations which happened back in 1900s when there was this pandemic happening. And during that time, this Azerbaijani millionaire, Haji Zainalabdin Tagiev, he sent specific vaccines to Pakistan. And I think that's one of the reasons that's where the Pakistani and Azerbaijani relations are originating from. And that thing have helped to bring these relations to different level. And obviously, I think the second reason could be the religion, because majority of Azerbaijanis are Muslims. And when you're looking at Pakistan, it's the same situation as well. So that could be one of the reasons why Pakistan wants to support Azerbaijan all the time. And it's interesting that even though we don't have any land borders aligning to, or we are not even connected through Caspian Sea, they still want to support Azerbaijan. And I feel like it's because of the past relations and it could like second reason could be religion. But to be honest, religion doesn't play that much of a role in today's politics, like in my opinion. So it's mainly about past relations that happened.
Now, would they be willing to send military support over to Azerbaijan?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Oh, would Pakistan be willing to send soldiers and military support over to Azerbaijan?
Well, according to their officials, I mean, like in the past, they made some statements that they were ready to go to the war if there's a need, and if Azerbaijan wants to go to the war, then like Pakistan will openly support that. If there's a need, they will send the military. So obviously, like there wasn't any major war happened um, since the like 1994 negotiations, except from 2016 war. So if there's this major outbreak of the war, there could be a possibility that Pakistan would be willing to send its army, or I don't know, any kind of military support. But to be honest, I don't really think there's a need for that kind of support, because Azerbaijan has a very powerful military, and in terms of powerful military, Azerbaijan is much better than Armenia. And also, if it's about support, I believe Turkey is much closer, and Turkey is much more willing to support Azerbaijan compared to Pakistan.
Okay. Do you think, like, I know from what talking to other people, it's the Nevichan province, the autonomous zone of Azerbaijan. If Armenia attacks that, Turkey's going to go in. But if there was Nagorno Karabakh from the Azerbaijani side, Turkey may supply arms, but I don't see him going in. Is that your belief as well?
Well, I don't know if you have read the news, but just after this conflict happened, when everything would like calm down, um, Turkey and Azerbaijani's military began these training sessions together, and I think uh, some sections of the Turkish military landed in the second biggest city of Azerbaijan, Ganja, which is in the close proximity to Nagorno Karabakh region at the same time, and the northern parts, which is Toulouse, where the conflict happened. So they began training together. I feel like it won't be a great problem to send the military, but obviously military, like they can send supplies at least. And take into account we still have this 15-kilometer of small border with Turkey. Um, so there's a possibility they may send the military right away, or at least they may send supplies. It depends on the situation, obviously. If there's this major outbreak of the war, and if the situation is really hard, yeah, maybe Turkey will send its military. We cannot know that. That's kind of, I feel like that should be discussed by politicians themselves. It's kind of hard to tell what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think ultimately, either multinational or bilateral solution should be reached, just given the history of kind of the conflict and all the civilians that have died in the conflict. Now, what I thought interesting about after this 2020 clash is all the protests around the world. It wasn't just protests like in the area. You saw the United States, you saw Great Britain, you saw Brussels, you saw Moscow. And I think some of that has to be tied into the people a little agitated with the global pandemic. But there is getting a little bit more national attention. And one of the stories I thought was interesting actually happened in Moscow, had to do with the apricots.
Yes.
And so there's a couple videos. There's one where people bought like 3 boxes of apricots and they're smashing them with their feet. And there's the other one where an Azerbaijani refused to sell Armenian apricots at their store. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, okay. So thing happened like this. So Armenia began attacking Azerbaijan on 12th of July. And a few days later, when the conflict was still real hot, and this Azerbaijani, like he's actually ethnically Jewish, but he grew up in Azerbaijan, so he has Azerbaijani relations as well. So basically, there's this great market in Russia, in Moscow, and that's for selling all those like fruits and other things. I just forgot its name. I think it's called Food City or something like that. So basically, they blockaded the Armenians from selling apricots over there. They said we're blocking all the Armenians from selling these things because of the obvious reasons that was happening at the time. And basically, they refused to sell Armenian apricots. But later on, I guess Armenians themselves in Moscow, they came to that place where all those cars were parked, like all those big trailers. So they began buying all those apricots. I think that wasn't unsold. They sold those apricots to fellow Armenians instead of selling it in the Food City market. So they still found the solution.
So, but there is some, like, I've seen some memes back and forth. There's the kebabs, which is kind of more of Armenians attack, and then you guys attack them on the apricots. Now, is that just kind of just a fun thing, or does that have deeper meaning?
About kebabs, actually, it's interesting why kebab specifically, because kebab is, I'll say, it's not exactly an Armenian cuisine, but it's more of I would say it's very famous in Caucasus area. Like if you're looking at the Caucasian geography or its cuisine, like you'll find out kebab is literally in like every nation's cuisine. I don't know why specifically kebab was put in that meme. I didn't see that meme personally, but I'm trying to imagine that. So I would say that kind of has a deeper meaning, but there's just one problem about that meme because, okay, we blockaded them economically in a way, like we didn't buy their apricots, we didn't let them sell that. But at the same time, they cannot exactly blockade us because in a way, we are economically much more free compared to them. And I don't know why there's this meme like that, because that kind of doesn't really describe the whole picture of the situation.
Yeah, you were mentioning, as far as being more economically free, Azerbaijan's foreign policy, other than Armenia, is quite good because they have decent relations with Iran, good relations with Russia, good relations with Turkey, good relations with Israel,
Yes.
good relations with Pakistan. Like all the wars in the Middle East, Azerbaijan's kind of stayed out of, kind of played a kind of a neutral body. It's just this kind of Armenia problem. Now, do you think if they were able to solve this through multinational or bilateral means, that both Azerbaijan and Armenia could potentially grow massive economies?
That's kind of a hard question because, in a way, Armenia itself, like the geographical area, is not really economically productive. The only productive area Armenia has right now is the occupied Nagorno Karabakh areas, which they are producing gold. They are mining those gold in Nagorno Karabakh region, especially in the southern parts of Nagorno Karabakh, I guess. So basically, like in a way, Armenia's economy would grow if Azerbaijan and Armenia would be in peace. But when it comes to Azerbaijan's economy, I won't say Armenia would have a great impact on Azerbaijan since they don't really have that much of productive means because they're getting their gas from Russia and I think their oil as well. And they're getting most of the things like imported rather than exporting. So I won't be really sure that Azerbaijan's economy would grow much more thanks to Armenia, but it will be the other way around. Armenia's economy would grow thanks to Azerbaijan because in a way, Armenia has been out of all those economical projects have been made in the past 20, 25 years. The gas lines, the oil lines that has been going through Georgia to Turkey, and obviously they're also looking for getting that gas and oil lines to Europe as well, which is a great project. And I believe because Armenia is isolated, they have been underdeveloped a lot. But if there'll be a peace, that's for sure going to be great for Armenia economically, because they're the ones who need to participate in those projects in order to benefit.
Yeah, just to kind of, you guys spent $2.2 billion this year on military equipment. If you took that 2.2 million and even cut it down to 600 million, you'd have 1.6 billion to spend eternally rather than on the military, because you guys get along with all your neighbors and you can develop some of the areas of your country is kind of where I'm looking at there.
Okay, yeah, right now I know what you mean. So basically, yes, that's a great point to mention. Yeah, obviously, if there's a peace and you don't really not need that much of military, you don't really need to be equipped, like in a very advanced way. So I believe if there won't be any war, if there will be peace, obviously that funding would be used for internal development rather than external development or something like for development of military. But it's kind of, again, like hard question to answer, because internally Azerbaijan is still developed very well, but there are obviously some areas that would need like more funding compared to now. So in a way, it would help us to grow internally, to make living much better in Azerbaijan. But at the same time, I wouldn't say it would affect like GDP too much. That's my opinion personally.
Okay, yeah, I would think, it's tough for, I know you guys have British Petroleum there, but I think it's tough for some foreign investment to go in knowing that there's potential for a conflict in the region. And I think foreign investment would go up if this conflict were to be solved, even in Azerbaijan and, of course, in Armenia.
Obviously, that's a great point, because in a way, although there's this danger of conflict, but everyone knows that there isn't an actual war happening, like there isn't an actual conflict happening, like there's not a there isn't an active war like in Syria or other parts of the world. It's more of a, like in every 2 or 3 years there's some like tense relations happening, then again we are going to the war. That's why I would say it didn't really affect Azerbaijan too much, but in a way, if I'm looking at it from the Nagorno Karabakh perspective, let's say Nagorno Karabakh is part of Azerbaijan and we are living in peace with Armenians. Yes, in that case, that would help Azerbaijan to grow its economy much, much better, because Nagorno Karabakh is rich in natural resources and it has great climate for agriculture as well. So I feel like that would help Azerbaijan to have better agriculture and obviously grow its economy in that way. But again, when you say like there will be peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia, I thought, okay, nothing like this has happened before, so we are living in a great shape. But obviously, if there's a peace from now on, and if we get Nagorno Karabakh back, yes, there'll be great economic development. Like there'll be much more benefits to Azerbaijan in that way, because again, Nagorno Karabakh is rich in resources, especially it has great climate for agriculture, and I believe that will be a great addition to the economy.
Okay. Now, with this conflict kicking up, like one of the things is the media coverage, like even like the death tolls reported by each side are way off, and even the equipment destroyed are way off. What is your feeling living in Azerbaijan of the media coverage of this conflict?
Okay, I was going to come to this point. I think I mentioned this in my podcast as well. There was this point where the conflict was happening, and there was this like shooting and all those artillery shelling, and most of our reporters were over there and they were doing these live reports from the area, but I didn't find any specific reports from the Armenian side from specific areas where the attack was happening, like where all the conflict was happening. So that was one of the points which kind of makes me suspicious of Armenian numbers, because we had journalists over there, and if there were like many more casualties than said by the government, they would have reported that right away, or at least we would have seen it some way or another. But the reality is, actually, one of my father's friends is living over there, is living in that area. and he was saying the situation was fine, and like there wasn't that too much of a damage, or there wasn't that there weren't that many losses from the Azerbaijan side. But thing is that I didn't see any live reports from Armenian side, and for a few times they have tried to show, like even their Minister of Defense tried to show fake video reels that they are shooting our unmanned aerial vehicles or something like that. Later on, I saw a few of the pictures like exposing that it's fake. Actually, those video reels are taken from different resources, like some American unmanned aerial vehicle was shot in Afghanistan or I don't know, somewhere else. So basically, there were a lot of fake facts, obviously. That's one of the great point to mention. And to be honest, if like when I was looking at the videos shared by Minister of Defense of Azerbaijan, I saw like there are a lot of strategic points like being bombed by Azerbaijan side, and it looked really effective as well. And at the same time, you were able to see there are some soldiers moving in the ground as well. So you were able to trust those resources. But again, the video reels shown by Minister of Defense of Armenia, some of them were fake, and they were exposed on Twitter as well. And there were also few fake facts about Azerbaijan protests as well, saying like Azerbaijan tried to be aggressive, or there were like reports like Azerbaijanis were trying to shell the civilian areas or something like that. But the thing is that we also had reports saying that Armenians themselves were shelling some specific like houses just to show off like Azerbaijan is attacking the civilian points. So that's kind of a complicated matter. And when it comes to numbers specifically, I feel like there were a lot of misinformation on the Armenian side about numbers, because if you're looking at all those video reels, it's literally impossible to survive those explosions, to like those bombs and other things. So I feel like the low numbers of casualties from Armenian side kind of look fake, I would say. Obviously, we had some losses as well, and we talked about them. We said how many soldiers we lost. Even we lost one civilian during this Armenian shelling. And I don't know, it's kind of hard topic to discuss, because in a way, okay, I'm living in Azerbaijan and I'm saying it from my own perspective, and some may say I'm biased, but in a way, I heard some feedback from the people who are living over there as well.
Do you think it would be something to have kind of like UN observers there along the border?
That's what I was telling before. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, and just having them like they can track, because from what I've looked at, there's been 7,000 violations of the ceasefire since 1994. And just having those UN observers, even if it's like equipment to show who's shooting at who, so then there's less kind of information, because like you said, the Armenian side is going to sell one story, the Azerbaijani side is going to sell the other story, and getting kind of a third party there on the border to kind of just say, who is right.
That's what I was telling. Like, Minsk group should have been there and should have to see that situation over there, but they haven't been there during the conflict when the civilian houses were being destroyed. Only like one MP and our human rights defender was over there, and none of the people from the Minsk group have been over there, nor the UN observers. And that's the problem with international organizations. They have been really irresponsible about the main conflicts. Like, it's not only about Azerbaijan or about Nagorno Karabakh. They have been irresponsible about Yugoslavia. They have been irresponsible about Rwanda and many more things like this. And their resolutions are not being fulfilled. The ceasefire violations are happening literally every day. And I was writing an article a few days ago, like about how many civilian people died during this conflict. And if you're looking at the numbers, there are some civilians who are children, and they died because of all this violence. And they died in a situation where sometimes there was no like actual hot war happening, but they died because of some, like some bomb thrown into the Azerbaijan side, or some child was shot by Armenian sniper. And it's bad. It's obviously bad. And although international organizations condemned Armenia about this, there's still no result. And that's the point. Like, condemning is not enough. Someone has to do something about that. I mean, that's why I'm like, if people are protesting for war, if people are protesting to get Nagorno Karabakh back, they have kind of full right to do that. In a way, international organizations have been ineffective. They have been ignorant about the facts that there's actual conflict happening, and Armenia is violating all the ceasefire regulations. So I feel like if there's a war happening in the future, from either side, UN or other organizations like that have no right to say like, okay, war is bad or you should stop or something like that. I think if something happens, it's partially because of them as well. It's not only the guilt of Armenia or Azerbaijan. So it kind of partly falls onto the shoulders of international organizations like Minsk Group or UN.
Yeah, we were talking about the three peacekeepers earlier. So you have Russia, which I think is a really bad actor as far as the peace. And fortunately, you guys haven't had Russian quote unquote peacekeeping officers there, because when they come in, they never leave and they're not really peacekeeping officers. But yeah, Russia's funding both sides. Armenia gets discounted equipment. You guys pay full price, which is a really bad kind of precedent solution.
Yeah, like recently when we were talking about this, like why the war happens thing, and recently the Gazprom, which is the Russian company which transports gas into Armenia, they decide to raise prices as well. So that's one more reason for that Armenian economy is falling, is in a bad situation just because of this price rise as well. So basically, it's fair enough, like what has happened in the past few days, like in the last months, the war. I think that's one more cause for that.
Yeah. I mean, generally economic downturn, gets the people kind of their blood boiling a little bit and gets them more kind of focused on putting the blame somewhere. Whether it's on the Azerbaijan side blaming Armenians, Armenian side blaming Azerbaijan, like economic downturn. It's probably one of the things with this COVID pandemic is an opportunity for it to pop off, because people are hurting through no fault of their own, just because it's the pandemic, a disease they can't control.
Like, to be honest, like pandemic, okay, like it really hit Azerbaijan in a way, like the oil prices went down, but still, like in general, there wasn't any protest against government or something like that during this pandemic. Obviously, there were a few people who were saying, okay, we have to finish the lockdown or something like that, which is fair enough to understand. People want to earn money, but there was some kind of government support, at least. Like it was like kind of minimalistic support, but still it was something. So compared to Armenia, we were performing much better in like economical terms or in political way as well. So in a way, if you ask me like who's the guilty side in the war, like if I wasn't an Azerbaijani, I would have, like, looking at the economic situation and the political situation in both of the countries, I would have probably said Armenia is probably the guilty one, because they're the ones who need to save their country's reputation, or want to divert the attention from the pandemic and the hardships in the country to the external threat or something like that.
Yeah, looking at some of the past skirmishes, you had 2008, 2012, 2016. A lot of those are tied to a dip in oil prices.
Yes.
So, like, there is the argument from the Armenian side that, when there's a dip in oil prices, there is potential for this to come up. And I think recovering from the pandemic, there's also potential. Now, going forward, do you think it's the likely future for Azerbaijan to become closer to war for the conflict?
That's an hard. That's real hard for me to kind of guess like what's going to happen in the future. But in general, again, like if international organizations are not going to be effective, And if they're not going to intervene in and say, okay, we are solving the conflict as soon as possible, there's always a chance of war happening between these two countries. But there's also one more thing, like if you are going to go to the war, we are not interested in Armenia. We are just interested in Nagorno Karabakh, which we have the right to occupy, actually. We have the right to occupy it by force because literally it's our lands. And if Armenia doesn't fulfill those resolutions, that's their problem. And there's another problem is their prime minister, Nikol Pashinyan, wants Azerbaijan to discuss peace terms with fake Nagorno-Karabakh government, not right away with Armenia. And that's another problem. And sometimes they say Armenia has actually no intervention in Nagorno-Karabakh in a way. And they say Nagorno-Karabakh has its own government. But in reality, prime minister's son served in Nagorno-Karabakh military. So in a way, Armenia itself makes this peace process much, much harder. And they are not really willing to give those lands back. And I feel like if there's another conflict happening like this, especially if it's going to happen through the Nagorno-Karabakh border instead of Armenia border, I feel like there's going to be a war. And I'm afraid not any of those countries will stop the war until one side wins the war. So that's kind of hard to guess what's going to happen in the future. But again, if international organizations are ineffective, if Armenia doesn't fulfill its resolutions or doesn't want to sit down to the peace talks right away, like instead of like saying, okay, Nagorno-Karabakh government should talk to Azerbaijan, and they should talk to us, not Nagorno-Karabakh government. We do not recognize them. And Armenia is the root of the problem, not Nagorno-Karabakh government. So I feel like, again, if these things do not happen, if international organizations are ineffective, Armenia doesn't fulfill its resolutions or do not want to sit down to the peace talks, it's likely to lead to the war. And yeah.
Which would be an awful thing because some of the videos, some of the things with Nagorno-Karabakh, those people aren't going to leave. It's going to have to be a total war, which will be extremely ugly. And, Azerbaijan on their side, they're fighting uphill, which is going to result in a lot of loss of life fighting uphill. Because that's what we learned from Star Wars. You want to take the high ground.
There's actually one more thing. Like Azerbaijan has like great equipment when it comes to like drones or other things. And I feel like that's one of the benefits with good relations with Israel. In a way, Azerbaijan isn't gonna really have any problems about taking back Nagorno-Karabakh militarily, but still, no one would like the loss of lives in the war. And as much as I'll be sad for Azerbaijani soldiers to lose in the war, I'm sure like people who do not want war in Armenian side would be as sad as I am about Armenian soldiers, because in a way, there are good people on both sides, and they say we don't want war. No one would like a war in a way because it's bad financially, it's bad economically, it causes loss of human lives, and obviously, sometimes war results in civilian, like loss of civilian lives as well, and more than military losses, I feel like civilian losses can be more, because at some point you need to use artillery or I don't know, drone strikes or other things, which you cannot really guarantee that you're not gonna damage civilian houses or something like that. It's bad in general. It will be awful, especially if there are other sides entering the war like Russia and Turkey. It will be much more ugly. And I'm afraid that may lead to a third world war, because both of those countries are in different security organizations, which requires those states in those organizations to protect those states in the war. And the war between two blocks is literally a world war.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, Pakistan brings in India, two of the world
Yes.
powers, and then that'll bring in China because China doesn't like India.
Yes, exactly. Like that will literally result in nuclear war. India, Pakistan, China, Russia, um, Turkey is a NATO state, so probably like the countries with nuclear power will have to join as well. And I'm afraid it's going to result. And Israel is supporting Azerbaijan in some like military way, like in like say send supplies or other things. And if Iran is in the war to support Armenia, because that has been the trend we have seen in the past years. Like Iran has supported Armenia more than they supported Azerbaijan, and I'm afraid it's going to be resulting in something of a great mess. It's going to result in world war, and that's for sure. And that world war is not going to be like World War II or One. It's going to result in nuclear war, which can
Yeah,
bring an apocalypse.
yeah, a lot of civilians, a lot of things, and I think that's one of the reasons why the media needs to pay more attention to this conflict
just
and
just one
potential.
more thing about media actually. There was this thing happened between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Like Armenia said, actually they have threatened to hit this water electric station, hydroelectric station basically, and that electric station is literally supporting like supplying Azerbaijan with like 80% of its energy, and that's really important like infrastructure for us. And when they said that, like Azerbaijani military officials said, our missiles have the capability of striking Metsamor NPP, the nuclear power plant. And unfortunately, Armenian media changed that and said Azerbaijan wants to strike the Metsamor NPP, which wasn't an actual statement. And that's the thing. If there's a war, I'm afraid Armenia won't be real fair about civilians, and they will hit important infrastructure for Azerbaijan, and they will do their best to, I don't know, hurt civilians as well. And that's why I feel like it will be much uglier war if something like that happens.
Well, yeah,
And
even looking back in 1994, I mean, Stepanakert got bombed as well, shelled, and like there's a lot of like things on both sides where they weren't necessarily targeting military, they were targeting civilian buildings. Like it would be a total war. So you're looking to kind of just take everyone out of that area because there's so much kind of animosity and hatred on both sides over this piece of land.
especially like when you're looking at the Armenian side, like I was seeing these pictures, like they're growing up their children in a way which uh, it's just sad and kind of makes me like it's kind of disgusting scene to see like they're growing up their children to hate us and to literally they're growing them up to kill us or like hate us only, which is a sad fact. And I'm afraid it's going to be really unfair war to have with Armenia, like especially in terms of civilian population. Like remembering Khojaly and other parts of what happened in the past, um, I wouldn't really trust Armenia about committing to the international law or Geneva Convention.
Yeah, I mean it's ugly. It's war. It's you know, like you said, total war. So it's not like you're just attacking their military, trying to take out their leader. It's like, well, we're going to take out everyone in our path. Now, going to kind of pivot a little bit to kind of like what was going to be kind of more of kind of the bulk of discussion is things that you wish the Armenian side would understand about this conflict.
Um, I feel like one of the most important things Armenians should understand is about the history. Like there was this information warfare happening between two states in the last months, and during that warfare, I saw a lot of fake tweets, and there were some tweets uh, which were impossible to believe them. There were like so much fake facts, and when I was reading all of them, sometimes I was laughing and sometimes I was pitying them in a way They have been brainwashed by the government all the time. And I would urge all the Armenians to check other historical resources about Nagorno Karabakh or about Armenia as well, because in a way, literally every argument I had with Armenians on the social media, every time I told them, bring me the facts about what you said, the next answer was something aggressive or some swear words or something like that. I feel like if you're on social media and if you're going to make an argument, you have to base them on non-biased opinions and on the realities, on the facts that you can prove. And you shouldn't show any aggression, or you shouldn't be using any swear words because you just can't prove your position. That's the one thing, like, I would really urge them to check other historical books, or I don't know, some other resources, so they'll be much more informed about Nagorno Karabakh. Apart from that, I feel like Armenian side should know this war damaged them more than it damaged us, because it harms us. Because in a way, they have been economically isolated. They have been in a real bad situation. They have been dependent on Russian gas and oil, which is increasing its prices all the time. I mean, if they haven't done this all the past years, they should have been included in all these projects. They will be probably benefiting from all those projects. They would have been living in a much better position, because there are some statistics showing that there are a lot of Armenians, especially young people, living in Armenia because the economic situation is really bad. The average living level is really bad as well. In a way, I really urge them to be more critical towards their government about all these things, and to remember the past, like what happened in Karabakh during that war, like how they killed our civilians or other things. Because they're trying to show themselves innocent all the time, and that's not the right way to do that. I mean, like, trying to show fake facts, or trying to do something wrong and then say, okay, Azerbaijanis did that. That's not the right way to really promote your country, or to say like Azerbaijan is guilty or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, there's gonna have to be give and take on both sides. Another thing, like, I don't think a lot of people realize is, from the war that ended in 1994, was the diaspora of Armenians and also Azerbaijanis that formerly lived in each country in Nagorno Karabakh. Like, I don't think you see too much, because on the Armenian side, they had the Armenian genocide, which is one of the things from the diaspora that they believe in, and they worry that this conflict will result in a second one. But I just think from the 1994 conflict, I don't think they understand how many people you guys had that had to leave Karabakh, that had to leave Armenia, as well as they probably know about the Armenians that had to leave Baku because they live there. But just kind of the diaspora on both sides of this conflict, you had about 1.4 million people who had to leave their homes, not able to return to their homes.
The thing is that the things that happened during that war from 1988 to 1994, especially the atrocities in Khojaly, like down by Armenian side, the 1 million migrants who came from Karabakh. Actually, my mother is from Karabakh as well. At the time, she was living in Baku, but her family, her mother and her brother, was living in Karabakh. They were living in one of the last districts that has been taken. It's called Zangilan, and they have faced a lot of dangers, like when they were escaping that area. And it has damaged Azerbaijan, like, economically. It caused like a lot of losses in the lives as well. And actually, there were a lot of people who came to Baku and died because of the climate change, because they were living in this cold climate of Karabakh. But later on, as they moved to Baku, which has been like polluted by all those factories and other things, especially during the Soviet times, there was a lot of production going on in Baku and in Sumgait, which was the closest city to the Baku. A lot of people didn't get used to the climate of Baku and other regions, and they died because of that. And obviously, the casualties in the war, like during the wartime, do not show the actual reality, and there's much more than that. And no one actually talks about that. And there's one more thing, like we have seen Airbnb renting houses in Nagorno Karabakh region. We have sent a lot of messages to Airbnb, but they don't listen to that. So that's one more thing. Like the people lost their houses, and now some people who are living over there illegally are making money out of those houses.
Yeah, and that's, it's one of the tough things. Airbnb is kind of a private organization. They actually do a lot of work of kind of against the hotel industry, travel across the globe.
Yes.
But yeah, that's, it's a tough thing, renting out somebody's house that didn't belong to you, that was only taken because of the war. Now, the other one, status quo is kind of the position that Pashinyan has taken. Now, why, from like the Armenian side of things, that, status quo, they want everything. Why is that unacceptable to Azerbaijan? And what should Armenians know about like that status quo position?
Like, can you explain it a bit, please?
So status quo, just keep everything how it is.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Okay. So basically, I feel like Armenian side should understand that Nagorno Karabakh is like before all these things happened, Armenians and Azerbaijanis lived together over there, and they were very peaceful up to the 1988. And obviously there were few like bad things happening over there, but still, like mainly they were living peacefully over there, and all the things happened because of the politics and because of all those separatists and many more things over there. But like people have to understand that Azerbaijan has a full right to that. We have lived there for more than thousands of years. Like Armenians moved to Karabakh and to the like the place where Armenia is situated today. Like after 1828 treaty between Russia and Iran, and 1829 treaty with Russia and Ottoman Empire. So basically, they came here after, like before, like we were living there before, and they came here afterwards. And right now they claim their land over there, which is unfair. What about the people living over there? And like they have to understand, Azerbaijan is not going to change about its perspective towards Nagorno-Karabakh's fake government, because when we were in the war, and from 1988 to 1994, we weren't only fighting Nagorno-Karabakh separatists. There was support of Armenia, and the thing is that Nagorno-Karabakh government can establish its power over there just because of Armenia. So Armenia should understand we are not going to sit down to the peace talks unless we talk to Armenia itself, not to the fake Nagorno-Karabakh government. And that's one of the things that we are not going to change our mind about, because we do not deal with terrorists. We want to deal with politicians right away and solve this problem. If it's about dealing with terrorists, I mean, Armenia should think about the future war as well. That's the point. And every time, like when I'm listening to the like overall situation, like how it's going on, I realize that Armenia is not willing to change its position about like Nagorno Karabakh. And if they're not going to do that, I'm afraid Azerbaijan's position is not going to change either, and the future wars are inescapable.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, like there doesn't have to be war. There needs to be a diplomatic solution. Now, what would you kind of expect like for a diplomatic solution for the area? Because like Armenia wants status quo, they just want all those lands to be transferred to Armenia. But Azerbaijan, I've seen, wants all those lands transferred to Azerbaijan. Do you think there's somewhere you guys can meet in the middle?
That's hard to answer because of what happened in the past. Like if you're looking at the Khojaly genocide, think about it. The thing is that like there has been a genocide happening over there, or massacre. It doesn't matter what you name it, but there were Azerbaijanis who were killed brutally, and there were children who were killed brutally. They made sure they were dead. And let's say if there's a peace happen, if there are peace talks happening, and let's say Azerbaijan takes back the control of those areas, I don't know how will be the resolutions for living over there together. Would the Armenians like to live over there, or would Azerbaijanis like to live with Armenians together? That's kind of an like hard guess to make. Like, and also like when it comes to negotiations, like when it comes to like decisions of Azerbaijan or Armenia, obviously both sides want to get their like as many pieces as possible, but Azerbaijan has the full right to take all those lands back. So basically, I feel like if like there has to be one way, Azerbaijan has to take back its lands. Like, okay, maybe Armenians can live over there if they want to. Like, if you're looking at the position, like if you're looking at the situation, if you're looking at the international law, we don't really have the right to transport them somewhere else or something like that. So that's going to be one of the problems. Who is going to live where? Like if there's going to be negotiations, that's going to be one of the problematic points for the negotiations or what's going to happen in the future. So that's kind of hard. Again, like as you said before, Armenia, like or Armenians fear that if there's a war happening, then there should be like second genocide happening, which personally, I do not really believe in the genocide story of Armenians in the past, like in during 1918. But in general, they don't trust us. And I don't know if we are going to be able to trust them after what happened in Khojaly. I mean, it's not like the case of Nazi Germany and Jewish population. That was something that happened because of one political ideology, one like few people who made decisions, and that's what really caused the genocide. But when it's the problem of ethnic conflict, and you don't know if you can really trust Armenians afterwards, after all these things happened, or Armenians do not know they will be able to trust Azerbaijanis or not. Personally, like we are not aggressive, we are not aggressors. If we are going to deal with the war, we are going to deal with the military, not with the civilian population. But I cannot be sure about the Armenia, especially after the last events. One of our civilians, 76-year-old man, like, died in its house because of the artillery shelling. So it's what this. It's very complicated. And again, Azerbaijan would like to take back all those lands. Then about living together, that should be decided later on.
Yeah, and I think ultimately living together would be the ultimate peace. But yeah, you do have to worry about both sides a little bit. Now, I want to talk about Khojaly a little bit because it seems so. I'm of the impression the Armenian genocide did happen, and one of the reasons you had the diaspora for the Armenian genocide. But also, like I've seen some denial from Armenia is that Khojaly happened, or if it did happen, they say, well, it was an inside job by the Azerbaijani government.
Okay, let me clear this up. If that thing didn't happen, then why there's a book of Zori Balayan, which is Armenian novelist and writer, who wrote in his book saying we have done specific things to the children, which I don't want to say here. I mean, look, you can just check it. His name is Zori Balayan, and like he made confessions over there saying like what they have done in Khojaly and how they killed mother and child in front of their eyes. And I feel like that kind of sums up everything, like what happened in Khojaly. and there are still photos, there are still videos from there, our our people were trying to collect the dead people from there, and also Azerbaijan is not the only ones. There are a few more people who made confessions about Khojaly, like what happened over there, what they have done, how they have burned all those people who were still alive. They shot them, but they weren't dead yet. And there were some women they were kept hostage and they were raped. Some of them were tortured, and even one woman, like when she was trying to escape these Armenians who were following her, she had to kill her baby just because there was a chance that the Armenians would kill her. I don't know. Like, Armenian genocide happened in 1918 or something like that, according to them, like during this World War I period. That's very far away history that you cannot be really sure of. And you do not have exact photos or videos to like support that fact. Like, but right now, Khojaly is in a very, like, it has happened only 28 years ago. So it's relatively easier to prove that. And when it comes to saying their arguments about like that there was something inside power to arrange that, that's more of a conspiracy theory. Again, like whenever I'm talking to Armenians, like when I'm having arguments with them, I'm asking them to give me the facts, to give me the basis to prove that, but they don't. So basically, if they want to prove their argument about state doing something like inside power, really arranging that Khojaly genocide, they have to show us the facts and proofs. Like when we are talking about Khojaly genocide, we are talking with proofs, but they don't.
Yeah, I think there was like an article in Russia is kind of what the main thing they use by a former president from Azerbaijan is kind of the thing they use. But from my perspective, like if there's anybody who should not deny a genocide, it should be the Armenians. Because a lot of the things with the Armenian genocide, like there weren't a lot of photos, there weren't a lot of proof, but you have the diaspora, which is around the world, and they had to leave for some reason. And, it was part of, I believe, some of the Young Turks that started in Turkey, a political movement that wanted to.
The thing is that during that time, during the World War I, actually, the Armenian, like there was this war happening, and Armenians, especially there's Armenian Christian leader or something like that. When the war started, they said they sent a message to Russia saying, "Bless us from Turkey," or like protect us from Turkey because from Ottomans, because we are afraid of our lives. And the thing is that during that time, they began attacking Turkish villages. It also happened in Azerbaijan as well. They attacked Turkish villages. They killed some Azerbaijanis as well during the World War I. And the thing is that because of that, I think Ottomans began transporting them to different areas. And obviously, they were killings on both sides. Like both Turks were being, the subject to the genocide, like to the, aggressive behavior, to the massacre, but maybe Armenians too, because they attacked as well. Again, the things with the World War I is too complicated, and it's a faraway history. That's kind of hard to prove because you do not really have that too much of a basis to do so. And when it comes to like showing the proofs, it can be biased in both sides, and you cannot be really sure about that. But in a way, when it comes to, for example, there was this genocide happened in 1918 in Azerbaijan when the Russian Empire was dissolved, and there was this temporary government put into place, and there was this great basis for Turkic ideology. Like the party with the Turkic ideology had the great basis in Baku, and Soviets tried to do the genocide with Armenians. So basically, they have killed a lot of Azerbaijanis over there as well. There are still photos, like they have burned down buildings, they have killed a lot of Azerbaijanis lying down on the street, and it has been a disaster as well. So it has happened before, and it's happening again. So if you're looking at the history from 1994 and up until this point, when ceasefire violations have happened, Again, like I have mentioned all those things in my article as well. Like I put down the photos, like who died during these attacks. 2-year-old Zahra and her grandmother died as a result of arterial shelling. Then there was this boy called, I don't exactly remember his age. His name was Fariz, and he was shot by Armenian sniper located in the Nagorno Karabakh area. Then there was another girl who found a teddy bear, which was booby trap, and it was sent through this river to the Tavuz, and that girl found that teddy bear and took it to the home, and it exploded. It wounded her mother and killed herself. So basically, these things happened. And if you're looking at the past and like what happened, like what they have done, at least from 1994 to 2020, like you can see Armenia has more aggressive behavior compared to Azerbaijan. I mean, that kind of explains everything. That kind of sums up everything, like who's guilty and who's not.
Okay. Yeah, I have a question from the chat. It says, if Azerbaijan retakes Karabakh, which is likely to happen, what is likely to happen to ethnic Armenians living there? Are they likely to leave the region, or can one expect them to stay in Azerbaijan?
So that's okay. Like that's what I was talking about just before. Like that's the thing. If Azerbaijan takes back those lands, it's also going to depend on the decisions of Armenians as well. Do they want to live over there? Are they going to trust us to live over there? And there's also a second part to this. During the 2016 conflict, we took back 4 small districts, and they were strategically important as well. And when we were taking them, like Armenians living in the area, they fled, and they took all those belongings and just left the place. So I'm afraid Armenians do not trust us. One of the reasons they attack Azerbaijan, and like when they are talking about us, they do not cause Azerbaijanis most of the time, but they cause Turks, because we are ethnically same as the Turkish people. We have the same ethnicity. Basically, like they treat us in a way, like they treat us badly, they treat us aggressively, just because what has happened with Ottoman Empire, which one cannot be sure what exactly happened. So because of all these things, they show us aggression, and right now, what's going to happen in the future, that's pretty much going to depend on Armenian side as well. Are the ethnic Armenians going to want to live over there or not? Are they going to trust us or not? Like again, the Azerbaijan side, do the people want to trust Armenians to live together? I feel like at best, if both sides want to live together or don't really trust each other, I feel like there should be kind of division to live in like different sides, but under Azerbaijani control. Something like this, at least. I mean, I'm not a politician, or I'm not an expert on like dividing areas or something like that. But for sure, if Armenians have a peaceful attitude towards us, if they want to live peacefully, if they want to live with us, I'm sure Azerbaijans would, to some extent, they would accept that. I mean, it will be really hard to convince the population, okay, we want to live with you, but still, I don't know. I think it's going to take a time. It's going to take a long time to live together, to get used to that. I don't think we will be able to go back to that point in the past where we were okay with each other, like we were talking to each other, we were having relations, we were living as neighbors. But I'm not sure what's going to happen afterwards. Like, is it going to be the same or not? So again, it's going to depend on the ethnic people living over there and ethnic people who want to go back to their lands.
Yeah, because I mean, in Iran, Armenians and Azerbaijanis live side by side. In Georgia, they live side by side. And then the leading ethnic minority in Azerbaijan is actually Armenians. So there are examples of you guys living together in peace.
Yeah, always. Like I have heard stories from my friends who are living in Russia saying like Azerbaijanis and Armenians are sitting in the same table. like they're eating together, they're talking, they're doing business together. I mean, it's possible if there's no politics, if there are no terrorist politicians on the head of Armenia. That's the thing. Like the former president Serge Sarkisian was actually from Stepanakert, which I think her mother still lives over there, and he was one of the people who fought in Karabakh and committed terrorist acts, committed violence. So I think if Armenia wants to live peacefully with Azerbaijan, first of all, they have to get rid of all the leaders who are aggressive towards Azerbaijan or who have terroristic behaviors. And I feel like Armenia has to take a step forward to get rid of all those brainwashing their children or their people by the government. Because when I'm looking at the situation, when I'm seeing them, it's really bad. For example, I study in the UK and I have seen some Armenians, and sometimes we had a chat together. I mean, we have talked to each other nicely. We didn't even have a talk about this conflict. And the point is, they didn't live in Armenia, they lived abroad, and they haven't been that much of brainwashed. And we were fine with them. Okay, like we weren't like great friends or something like that, for obvious reasons. But at least we were fine. Like we weren't killing each other. We weren't on each other's neck.
Yeah, and that's the case. And I think if the conflict, it may take some time, but if the conflict gets solved, you could live together in peace, and then it's only going to improve the relationship in the South Caucasus region, and then maybe you guys can help Georgia fight off the Russians.
Who knows?
Yeah, get back into that Trans-Caucasus kind of group. But yeah, I think peace is eventually possible, and it's going to take both sides to give and take a little bit to ensure that happens, because 1.4 million people being displaced from their homes does not sit well, because I can't imagine, being driven out of your home and having to pick up and move somewhere else, not by your choice, but by conflict.
Actually, like the people who had to leave Karabakh are not the only Azerbaijanis who had to leave. For example, there were a lot of ethnic Azerbaijanis living in Armenia as well. And my father is one of them. He is one of the ethnic Azerbaijanis who had to leave Armenia because of all these things happened. And there were a lot of Armenians who had to leave Baku or Sumgait as well, or other regions. That's kind of sad. Like when you're looking at the situations, they have lived like neighbors, like they have given each other food or something like that. But right now, because of all these things, like no one can do anything. That's the thing. Even I have seen some video reels when some Armenians visit Azerbaijan, like with specific permissions, obviously, and they came here to see their neighbors, like old neighbors, and they knew each other. They were fine with each other. I mean, there were a lot of innocent people from both sides who had to suffer because of this war. And because of this terroristic behaviors, like there were a lot of Armenians died because of Armenian terror as well. Because up to 1988, there was this secret organization to fund all these terroristic acts against Azerbaijan. And there were a lot of Armenians supporting that, but the people who didn't support that organization were punished by that organization itself because they didn't fund them. And that all the things happened during this Sumgait issue in 1988, when they were saying Azerbaijanis killed Armenians, but later on, we uncovered that there was this Armenian called himself Pasha who organized all these things to kill the Armenians who didn't support that organization. So again, what I want to tell is, from the both sides, innocent people suffered. Maybe more Azerbaijans suffered than Armenians, but still.
Yeah, there's too many people that have suffered, and like you said, this conflict can eventually escalate into another world war. So it's in the best interest of the world to get it solved sooner rather than later.
Exactly.
And so, do you have any final thoughts as we're going to wrap this up?
Like finally, I'll just urge like both sides, especially like recently this protest happened and there has been violence in LA then the rest of the world. In the process, Azerbaijanis were attacked. I just urge both sides to be away from being too emotional, and I just urge all of them to be as peaceful as possible. Because okay, there's a conflict and it is still going on, although there isn't any hot war going on right now. But there's one thing. I mean, Azerbaijanis were definitely innocent since like 1988 up to this point, and there's no need to like commit to violence or to be like really emotional to commit to that violence. I believe that I think each side, like, sorry, each side should respect each other, should respect each other's boundaries and dignity. That's all I want to tell. Like, everyone wants peace in Azerbaijan. There was this great quote from one of my friends who said like obviously, like, most of us do not want war, but I won't like any war unless I have my full territorial integrity. That's the point. Like, we don't have full territorial integrity right now. And if that population out there, if that protest happened, then Azerbaijanis want to go to the war over Nagorno Karabakh, they had the full right to do so. And we wouldn't like any war if we had the Karabakh back, if we didn't have any violations of territorial integrity. That's all.
Okay. Well, thank you, Alish, for joining me today.
And thanks for inviting me. It has been great to talk about this.
Yeah, it's good to hear voices of people who are actually going to be affected by this, because generally politicians avoid being in war, being at the front line, and it's the people on the ground level that are going to suffer more. And kind of the thing, I'm looking for as many Azerbaijanis and Armenians to talk to about this, just to kind of get their side out there, to get their viewpoint, because I think it's very nuanced, it's very complex, and it's good to hear from people such as yourself on this conflict. So thank you so much for joining me, and to everybody out there, enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thanks. Have a good Sunday as well. Bye.